So that's the official Pathfinder people. And then we have you guys. So if you can tell us your name and kind of where you are in life and how unschooling connects to you. Just an introduction round.
I am Aosha. I would like to start by saying that I've known Hope since I was 9. I'm 21 years old. I've known Hope since I was 9. And she's a very big part of who I am today and started me on the path that I am on today in a very similar way to what I think is going to be happening at this school. Just sort of inspiring me to be out in nature. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm working as a backpacking guide, outdoor educator. I work for Piedmont Wildlife Center. I've worked for Schoolhouse of Wonder. I've worked for Piedmont Wildlife Center. I've worked for Triangle Adventure Outfitters, a couple of different companies in the Triangle area, running trips and teaching workshops and classes for kids and adults alike. Right now I'm also running my own program 1 day a week for homeschool kids. So I have them come out to a piece of property that we have access to, and we spend 4 hours every Thursday hanging out in the woods and just having fun and learning about nature, edible plants, and starting fires and all that fun stuff. I'm doing a lot of traveling. Very, very free lifestyle, which I think a big part of that was my unschooling, homeschooling upbringing. I was given a lot of confidence and freedom to feel like I could do whatever I wanted to do. And that's, I think, one of the biggest parts of being unschooled for me was just not feeling like I had to be someone or had to be something. I could choose that path for myself, and that was really drilled into me at a very young age. So I really credit that lifestyle and that upbringing. This is my mother right here, so it's a big part of that. To bring me where I am today, which is a very good place. I really love where I'm at, and had I been in the public school system or any other kind of school system, I really don't think that I would be anywhere near where I am right now. So yeah.
Yay, welcome. We can just go this way. Do you guys want to use a talking stick? That's a funny face. No. Okay, Christy.
I can.
I have one if it helps.
I am Christy Simcoe, and yes, unschooling works. It really works. I am a mother to Kaylee Rose, who's 12, unschooled, and Aosha and his twin brother Kaya. So they never went to school, and I want to say that I'm not just a mom of unschoolers, but I'm also unschooling myself, and I continue to. And that's something as a parent that I really like to support other parents, to process, is that, as we raise these children in this particular way of living, it's really a lifestyle choice, that we really have to unschool ourselves, because we have all these ideas about how, we filtered information and how we filtered learning, and so we have to really be conscious of how we're doing things in order to allow our children to really be who they are. So I'm still unschooling myself, and I just applied to midwifery school, so it never ends, and really excited about that. And so what was your question?
Just your name, where you are in life, and then how are you related to unschooling?
Yeah, so I guess that's it. I mean, I had the privilege of being home with these beautiful children for, many years, and I'm just really excited about what they're doing and who they are and how confident they are, and also now what they're bringing out into the world. Like one of the things that we talked about early on is that we all have a purpose. That's why we're here. And what that is really not up to anyone else except ourselves to really feel that. So I can talk more about that later, but that's my introduction. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alice. My relationship to unschooling was I was unschooled from the time I was born until 14, when I told my parents I wanted to go to school. So I went to 3 years of high school and then into college. And that sort of just that was just I wasn't pushed into it. It was just sort of, I decided I wanted experience in lab science, and I told my parents that's what I wanted, and it's what I'm doing now. And so yeah, I know Hope from my time at Schoolhouse. I spent a lot of years internship doing the pre-counselor and then the counselor positions there. And now I am working at the EPA doing research science there. So yeah, it's my verse.
Last year you graduated.
And last year I graduated from Goucher College, which is a small liberal arts college.
My name is Andy, and this is my son Blake. And I was homeschooled starting in 4th grade through basically through high school. I did a sort of a part-time stint in middle school for 8th grade, but basically through high school, and then I went to the school in the community for I guess it would have been my junior year of high school, which was a charter school that was getting kind of similarly philosophy to the unschooling philosophy. So a lot of kids trying to work out sort of democratic processes for how to run their education. And what am I up to now? I do tree work in Chapel Hill, and I take care of Blake, and I live at Blue Heron Farm, which is a community that I grew up in, with 15 houses in rural Chatham. That's my story.
So then I just wanted to open it up to Q&A. So basically, what questions do you guys have? Do you want to hear? We can ask a question and have everybody answer. If you have a question for a specific person, we can be kind of casual about it. And if you don't have questions, then I'll just say, what do you want to talk about? Start talking about it.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
To Alice, right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting because you went from an unschooling background into a public high school, right?
I went to Durham School of the Arts.
So, how did you deal with that transition? What did you think of the transition when you encountered something that you didn't know? Did you feel prepared, first of all? And if not, what did you do?
Sure. So I think there's two aspects that are sort of daunting about school or high school in general, is the academics coming from an unschooling background and being around that many people. And for the being around many people, I was so fortunate to grow up in this area where there are a huge number of programs for unschoolers like myself, where I, on a very regular basis, was interacting with, there's a stigma of homeschoolers where you're antisocial and don't have social skills. And I sort of thought that of school kids because all they had was people their own age. They didn't know how to interact with many different age groups. They didn't interact with adults except for their teachers, and that was very formal. Where I had grown up with this really cool background of interacting with adults on a daily basis, and so there was so that was, the social scene was very easy to drop into. I will say on my very first day, I was sitting like this right now, and I hadn't really sat in a chair for long periods of time before, and I got that characteristic red dot on my leg, from cutting off blood circulation, and I freaked out because I didn't know what it was. Because I hadn't sat still in a class in a confined seat for 50 minutes 8 times a day. And so that was the one really scary thing. As for the academics, that other part, I think when you're unschooled, and when you're making decisions for yourself, and you're sort of learning the things you're interested in, it teaches you a lot of critical thinking, which again I think is sort of limiting in schools where they're so structured. They don't allow you to make that own. They give you the structure. They don't allow you to make it. And I think because I had that ability going in, the academics were very, very easy. Because instead of teaching them to myself, there was just someone there telling me what I needed to know. you know? And so I think even if I went in and I remember the first history class I took, I was like, I had no interest in history when I was growing up, so I didn't read a lot of history books. And so I remember the very first history class I ever took was AP US History. And like, there was like some very commonplace information that like you learn in middle school, I guess, that I didn't know about like wars and places, and certainly they're important. But I hadn't decided to teach myself that when I was younger. But it wasn't like it was difficult to then learn it at that age because.
So I have a question. I think it's really easy. It's easy for me to always look at what the great benefits are. But I'm wondering if you guys have any comments that might be helpful for parents to be thinking about for kids that are embarking on or are in a process of some kind of very different, out of mainstream life for themselves and their kids. Like, what's hard about that, and is there any advice you could give parents to navigate that better or well for themselves and their kids?
I think I could respond to that. Having unschooled my children all those years, I would just say doubt your doubt. Doubt your doubt.
Uh-huh.
Because, we live in this world and we're told, this is what successful is, this is what makes you a person, this is what makes meaning in life. But when you're learning from the inside out, you have to trust that. And you have to trust what you know inside, or what you love, or what you believe in. And that is a very different approach than having, like Alice was saying, someone saying, this is what you need to know. And so that is such a different direction in our culture. And it really is counterculture. And so it's like, what I say to people over and over again, it's a lifestyle. It's a way of living. It's not just an approach. So it's a way of life. It's a way of living. It's a way of being with your family. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of integrating life. And so to doubt your doubt, because people don't, understand you, or they say, no, you're not doing it the way you're supposed to. Well, what is that, So I would just say, you are going to go through cycles of doubt. And that still, for me, doesn't end, even with grown children, and then, still having Kaylee being unschooled at home, it's like every once in a while I go, oh, like, what am I doing, or what am I not doing? What am I not doing? And then I check in, and I look, and I say, okay, let me take an inventory here. Okay, like what matters to us, and are those things, how is that going? And it works. So does that help?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to hear from those of you who unschooled too. Like, did you have difficulties from either your peers or currently from people who are just like do you get tired of answering the same questions over and over? What's the problem with like having this as your educational history, and how do you deal with it?
I don't know if I would say that there was any real big problems for me, or big like things that I can recognize. Living that different lifestyle, definitely you get some judgment from people, which is one thing that I noticed. And if you're raised in a good family situation like I was, that doesn't bother me. But there is that aspect of like, especially as you get older into high school and towards college, like I made the decision not to go to college.
Right.
And a lot of different people, look at that in a very negative light for whatever reason. And it's usually something about themselves, it's very personal. That's like, they're putting it on me or whatever. It's like, I don't care. But that is one difficulty that I have experienced. Not to say that it was difficulty personally for me, but it was something that would come up. That's probably the biggest thing that I can think of. Another thing is a little more superficial, but would be like, spending a lot of time with my parents. It's like, I feel like kids who go to school get that space and come back, it was a bit of a double-edged sword because I developed a really great relationship with my parents because I spent so much like quality time with them. But especially as between the age of probably like 13 and 17 was very challenging in different ways. And I'm looking back on it and I'm like, okay, well that was like fine, whatever, but my brain at that age could not recognize that. So I think being around your parents definitely tries your relationship with them a little bit more than it would if you had a lot of space like kids do in school when they're gone a lot. And I had plenty of time away. You know, I did a lot of stuff on my own and did a lot of programs and things like that. But I think that was definitely something that is something to keep in mind. It's just that your relationship with the children is going to be, I think, is probably going to be a little more challenging in some ways because of that amount of time spent together. But like I said, there's also the positive side of it, which is you get a lot more time to build a good relationship. So.
And can I add something just to piggyback on what Aosha is talking about, is that when we were mingling and mixing, and I heard him say to Kevin, I believe, so like, you know, how my mom raised me and how basically all these other people raised me. So it's like really a community experience when you're unschooling and homeschooling. So it's like not just like this nuclear family and you're in your box. It's like Hope really, really influenced, for instance, how Kaya and Aosha both have been in the world, you know, and other people too. I mean, it's just a whole community. That's why I love this, you know, the Pathfinder community, because it really is about that. Yeah. It's not just the family raising the kid and schooling them.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I did decide to like leave and go to school. And again, that's like from a very young age, I knew I liked science. I didn't know what kind necessarily. I liked environmental science. I liked the life sciences. I knew that, like very, very young. I was very into like mushroom identification and plant identification and just like learning how things worked and what they were. And so the reason I sort of decided to go to school in the first place was I used to go to thrift stores and buy like cheap science textbooks. You know, just to like read them. I have this like 1,000-page marine biology book by Jacques Cousteau that I used to like, I would like flip through and look at the pictures, like sometimes read a chapter. But at some point I realized that I was very serious about this, and I could either spend a lot more time really trying to focus myself and teach myself complex sciences or take classes in it. And that's when I told my parents I wanted to go to school. And so I have no doubt that I could have continued to teach myself science and gone to college and learned that way. I know, like, my brother was homeschooled until he went to school, until college. But that was one thing that, like, my parents have really not a huge science background at all. Like, my mom's a nurse, but other than that, it was really all self-taught science until I went to high school.
Did you face any weirdness from your peers about like, oh, you're a homeschooler?
Yeah, I will say there's that initial sort of like what I said with the social scene at school. There's that initial assumption that you're that you're weird and you don't know how to communicate.
You don't have any friends.
Yeah, how do you know people when you're homeschooled? Or like, what do you do? I think there's like an assumption that you go, like, we wake up and you sit at a table at your house and you do work. And I was like, yeah, no. Like, I wanted to learn math, so my mom like bought an online thing for me to learn math and was like, finish it in a year at your own leisure, and if you don't, that's cool. So like, I sort of took algebra online, but I never finished it. But that's fine. I took algebra 2 in high school and there was no problem there. After not finishing my online algebra class. Like, it's fine. That's all I can say. But with science, I wanted a lab. And so that was something that I found personally difficult to find. But that was just.
Mm.
And then Andy, anything to?
Yeah. So I left public school, and I think I'm maybe I might have done all of my homeschooling 10 years previous, or maybe a few more years previous to you all, and there was less, at least where I was, there was less infrastructure. So I experienced a lot of loss because I lost a lot of friends who I knew from public school. And I still would maintain those relationships outside of school, but so much in our culture is school, especially kid culture, right, is totally school-centric. And so everything has to do with school schedules and the way the summer is scheduled and the way spring break is, and all of those things are totally sort of foreign to a kid who's not in school. And so it was isolating, and I think that was the main complaint I had, or the main challenge, was just that I found it isolating. It was mostly me and my sister and my family a lot of the time. And yeah, so that's the biggest challenge. I think I would have liked to have a place to go to just see more kids.
Cue the Pathfinder advertising.
You can, if you could think of such a place.
And actually do it. I mean,
Right, and then have it available, yeah, nearby. Yeah.
Right, that's true.
Right.
So I have two kids. One is still in school and he's 6, and this is my first year homeschooling my 8-year-old.